There's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Speeding the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy, and it is Monday. Yes, it is Monday. Well, but we are in the halfway point of February. You know, it doesn't mean a lot to people. Actually, I shouldn't say that because right now it's snowing in Texas, so that's kind of a big deal. This is the only. I think this is typically. Well, Carrie, you can correct me on this, but I think this is really the only time that it ever has a chance to snow in Texas. You know, because of the winter solstice that we're currently in the middle of. It's funny though. You get used to your surroundings. Obviously, the last 2 to 3 weeks where I live, you know, the average temperature is about. Now this is the average day and night, so it would be probably around the 15 degree mark Fahrenheit, right? So I guess your body just gets used to that cold. I went outside and just this shirt on with the dogs to let them out, and it's like it's like 20 degrees today. It's like it's practically tropical right now. It's like, wow, I don't feel cold at all. Wow, this is great. So anyways, that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. But we are going to have a introduction of someone that I know. Carrie Bartlett, how the hell are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Andy. Yeah, it's still snowing here in New Mexico. So I know that people in Texas, everywhere from Texas all the way up the East Coast. In fact, I saw this really nice graphic where we have a 134-degree swing from South Dakota down to Miami, where it's negative 44 in South Dakota and like 95 degrees in Miami. So all across the U.S., you have this amazing weather pattern. My husband and I were talking about it. We were like, is this something that we hadn't considered with climate change? Because I'm in the desert and they have already had more snow in this winter cycle than they ever had. And you know, when you have water insecurity in the desert, not a bad thing, but it does make some planning.
It confuses the fuck out of the cactuses.
It does because, you know, they're localized plants and animals are used to a certain pattern. Now all of a sudden you're going to give them a heavier, harsher winter. What is that going to look like? So yeah, it's been interesting because it's still snowing here and it's like 22 degrees, I think.
And we haven't had a lot of snow in Ontario. It's been I've been able to clear most of the snow with a shovel, and I have a snowblower, right? It's that little snow that somebody as lazy as me at 55 would choose to use a shovel to clear it than a motorized vehicle, right? So it's been a very strange winter. It's been really cold, but from what I understand, with the climate change is that as the earth heats up, the poles lose their ability to some degree to maintain the cold over the very northern and southern parts of the earth, right? So the cold slips down to where, or up, you know, I guess when we look at the earth, there's really no up and down, but a wave that slips away from the poles and encompasses more of the areas closer to the equator, which is why you're seeing these temperatures drop because climate change has given the Earth has lost its ability to hold all of the cold at the very top or at the very end South Poles, right? So that's what you're seeing. Unfortunately, that takes a little bit of a stretch of critical thought that can easily be co-opted by climate change deniers and say, look, it's not warming up. It's snowing in Texas. How can they say the Earth is warming, right? So
and that's
can't win
exactly
for
right.
losing. So people are trying to. You have a half inch of snow on the roads in Texas, and you get 45 car pileups.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
and that's the same thing here. They don't salt the road, so you have all of these areas where just an inch of snow, and that's kind of what we're seeing now. So so everybody stay safe, stay warm, and
except for you bastards in Florida.
right, exactly. So so if you're tuning in for the first time, I just noticed we're actually streaming to Rome's Twitter. So hi,
Nice.
Rome's audience. So we'll get that fixed. Sorry, Rome. He's probably still sleeping and has no idea. So yay. But we'll get that fixed. And then for everyone who is tuning in for the first time, we are live, obviously, and completely interactive. So as we get through some of this content today, and I know there are going to be some hurt feelings, and people are going to feel some type of way about some of the information I present. It's presented. Look, I'm no better than you are, but we need to be less shitty people. And that is why we're going to go through this conversation today. And it's interesting because I float out ideas and concepts on social media and pay attention to the rebuttals and pushback that I get. So this entire weekend, Blue MAGA was off the charts. And I got to tell you, these were even some true progressive allies who were repeating the same talking points that I saw under the Trump administration with the alt-right and red MAGA. And it was an interesting, first of all, I was deeply disappointed to see it, but not entirely surprised because human nature being what it is, the organism that has changed the least in the face of history is man and woman. And that's because we don't really strive to be better humans, less shitty people. So today, maybe that little bit of angst that you feel, or that anger, or whatever it is that you're feeling, this is a good thing. Okay, so it shows that maybe you have a little bit of compassion, or maybe you recognize that the path you were on maybe wasn't the right one. So I don't know, but like I said, we're live and interactive. So if you type a comment, particularly on Twitter, on Facebook, on our Twitch, we'll see you join the conversation. But I do got to tell you, you're going to have to do more than just ad hominem attacks, because that's pretty much what I saw all weekend, and it does nothing for no one. So let's
and that makes perfect sense, right? It's the problem is that especially Americans, and I say that, and I know so many Americans now, and they're human beings just like all over the world. The problem is that unfortunately Americans are subjected to the greatest propaganda machine that's ever been created, which is the American propaganda machine, right? And so if we want to counter that effort, right, it's a matter of people coming to an understanding that exists, and it's meant for a specific purpose of vision, right, between races and classes and all of that stuff, right? And if we as a people can understand that we have more in common than we have differences, and that's the first part of it, right?
And in this case, we have being shitty as a commonality. So real quick, good morning, Mike. He says good morning, insert random insult. Thank you. And then we have Seven joining us this morning. Super excited. Seven's always hilarious. So super excited, and it's a good treat. Thank you, Seven. So all right, let's get started. First graphic, if you would please, Mr. Andy. So for those of you who didn't catch it, Judas and the Black Messiah came out to general audiences and on HBO Max. That was Friday. So if you hadn't seen it, please go watch it. And I'm not going to give you too many spoilers in this, so you should be okay. But it was so long overdue to have any type of biopic about Fred Hampton. And now, hindsight being 2020, I remember seeing all the ads and all of the propaganda surrounding the negativity on Black Panthers. And as I've gotten older, you know, especially as a white person, and learning, yeah, none of that was true. And in fact, it was our own government going after this group. And I was trying to understand why. Well, this movie helps illustrate that just a little. They really only, and that is because, number one, Fred Hampton, you know, I hate to use the term Messiah as a religious person, but this dude was so woke. I mean, and even the description of his family is like, even as a young child, this guy knew. He knew what was going on, and he was totally in the right place at the right time. So it's kind of like from, hey, Sherry, good morning. He was the person that was supposed to be here, if you believe in fate, karma, whatever. So what he actually did that was such a threat was he went to poor, marginalized communities in Chicago, and he was working on creating coalitions. This is where the Rainbow Coalition thing came from, right? So you could see in the movie where they touch on just minor bits and pieces, but this was really a big deal. And that was what made him so dangerous, was that he was able to illustrate to people who seemed to be in a different space, different walk of life, different race, different whatever. He was able to get them to see, hey, it's us, it's all of us. And what did Sanders say, right? All of us, right? So it was that same theme, same commonality. That's what made him so dangerous, right? They didn't want him to rise to that kind of power and influence.
Right, to the oligarchs, right, to the elites.
Mm-hmm. And it's just,
right, and it's no different than now. It's the exact same, right?
They went after Bernie Sanders. They're definitely going after Nina Turner. We've seen that, and in fact, I've mentioned it here. And if you don't have a copy of Howard Zinn's A People's History of the U.S., go get one, because he talks about how segregation laws came up. It was poor white people and poor Black people were getting along too well. And so the first laws that came out were to prevent interracial marriage. And that was before the War for Independence, right? So that's dangerous. We can't get along. So yeah, Andy, to your point, over and over and over, this is exactly what happened. So in this particular graphic, we have the villain, right? And the way that he's presented, I think they really tried to make him a sympathetic antagonist in this movie, because we've seen this. And as a progressive working in the political space, this is something that I warn candidates about. And I warn people who are trying to create an organization around a particular movement. You are going to have somebody who is going to be tested or will be compromised. Or I've seen it in our original Bernie group. You had a bunch of these neoliberals join the Bernie group, and then they literally took myself and a bunch of other Bernie endorsed candidates and kicked us out of a Bernie group, took it over, and then dismantled it. It's all the time. So as I'm watching this and I see this guy who is used to dismantle the Chicago Black Panthers, it was just, I'm just kind of shaking my head, because we see it over and over and over again. And I gotta say that this is where people are gonna get a little edgy with me. That's your AOC, right? AOC was this great champion of the people, got to Congress, and she's like, wait, not yet, hold on, pay go, we're negotiating behind the scenes, and whatever other excuses she came up with. So there are so many similarities in this character alone. And what I thought was interesting was going back to watch his interviews after the fact, and you could see that he was going through the mental gyrations where we have to compartmentalize our role in dismantling what would have been a meaningful movement, right? So he, in his old interview, says, I was part of something special, and he's talking about the Black Panthers, denying in his own mind his work with the FBI to bring that down. And history shows us that when he finally had to confront that reality, he ended up committing suicide. So he left his uncle's house on Martin Luther King Day when that televised interview came out, and he ran on to the Eisenhower Expressway. Those of you who don't know Chicago, it's a major highway, and in Chicago fibs, I don't know if I can say this, fucking Illinois bastards drive like bats out of hell. So
It's like the way you said that really fast, just in case.
Just in case. But yeah, so and they ruled it a suicide, and it probably was. So it's easy to watch this movie and look at this O'Neill character as the bad guy, but what I want you to kind of sit with is we are all this O'Neill character and have the potential to be. And hold on to that, because I think as we go through the rest of this conversation, you're going to see yourself as the O'Neill. And what do you do about it, right? So that is really going to be the struggle when we're done here. So there's that. All right. So you had this wonderful movie. Love it, hate it, whatever. It's so long overdue, and I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more about Fred Hampton and the movement and what he was doing. I'd like to see that part of it, but until we get it, Daz, get on it. Yeah, so this will have to suffice, but that kind of sets up this conversation about where we are in history. So the other part of it that I want to talk about is what happened in the aftermath. And Andy, this is the next graphic with this really good reporter that I think needs to be mentioned here. So,
Okay.
So what you mentioned it, Andy, the propaganda machine, right? So after Fred Hampton's death, you had Chicago PD, and those of you from Chicago or in any major city will recognize this pattern because they still do it. They went out and said that it was this huge shootout, and you can go back and see the newsreels. In fact, I posted a link to a Vimeo archive where Chicago reporters were repeating the information that the police had given to them, that it was a horrific shootout, and they called it a miracle, a literal miracle that no Chicago police officers were shot. Well, the reality was the reason they weren't shot was because
it wasn't a shootout.
It was a massacre. It was a no-knock warrant massacre. And that's what happened. So this young reporter who has just recently passed away, his name is Joe Reilly, he was sitting at the news desk, and the editor, this is the part that got me from a journalistic point of view, because this doesn't happen anymore. The editor got a tip from somebody, probably somebody who was at the facility, at the location where the Black Panthers were, or heard conversations. They got this tip that the Black Panthers had not fired back on police. So the editor went to the news desk, said, hey, who's available? Let's go check this out. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to. And part of it is because newsrooms have no people working there anymore. I swear, I think there's one guy working at the AP, and all the newsrooms just kind of recirculate that. So,
and what's the point? Because there's no reason to counter the mainstream media agenda, which is to support the oligarchs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why go out and get the real facts if the narrative that's out there is what you want to begin with?
Right, and there's also this prevailing wisdom that okay, yeah, this was a bad thing, but we don't want things to get out of hand. We don't want the city burnt down. We don't want people rioting. So let's just go with whatever they feed us and really not investigate. Well, that is not the role of a reporter. The role of the reporter is to present the information as factually as they can, meaning that you have corroborating sources, and it all things being equal, this looks like what happened. It is your job to present it, and it's for the public to make a decision, right? But that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is oftentimes, not all editors, but often in the catch and kill cycle, the editors are making the decision about what the public should have access to, and that's contradictory. So that's propaganda. But in this case, this young guy, Joe Reilly, went out and he went to the place. I don't know if it was an actual apartment or a series of offices, but this was the Black Panther headquarters where Fred Hampton was massacred. And he just looked around. And he looked at this photo that the police department had issued and said, oh, look at all the bullet holes and all of this. And they actually went through, the police department went through a theatrical reenactment of what happened to try and explain it. And where have we seen that before, right? I just did a story on Kenosha police who did their theatrical reenactment 3 times of a shooting death for a 21-year-old kid. And each time they changed their story a little bit, trying to fit the evidence because they knew they were lying. Well, yeah.
Yes, and that's, we know that in human nature, if you're trying to provide a false narrative, you typically give out more information that's needed, right? In order to be convincing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's this Reilly character, just flunky reporter, this young guy was able to go, yeah, those aren't bullet holes, those are nail holes. And that was this huge revelation. So the image is from the Sun-Times, who is effectively posting a retraction of what and that, here's why it's significant, because this reporter did his job. And the paper didn't make a decision to withhold the evidence that their own reporter had, published it, and this became the catalyst for the longest civil rights lawsuit in state history. 12 years. Fred Hampton's mother and a number of others sued the Chicago Police Department and the city of Chicago. And it took them over 12 years to finally get justice. Finally. So that is why I want to post this as an addendum to this larger conversation, because it's not just the police. It's not just us sabotaging our own movements, but it's also reporters and editors who have a job to do that right now isn't being done, right, by us. So we're trying, we're so
That's
little.
right. And our 10s and 10s fail.
Right, our 10s and 10s. So we love you all. Thank you. And we appreciate every time that you weigh in with your comments or share it, or all of that. So that aside, so shout out to Mr. Reilly, because he actually, to me, in the aftermath, this guy was a hero. And I think we need to recognize that as we move forward, and being able to hold our journalists, our editors accountable is such an important part of making positive changes in who we are. So there's
I'm sad that blows me away that the court case took 12 years to come
12
to
years.
fruition.
Well, so you and I have talked about this before, that we've had guests on. We had a number of guests, one whom is starting as a clerk at the Supreme Court. So thank you so much to you, Daniel, who talked about the unequal protection in the justice system and why it comes down to your money, right? So what they do is try to wear you down and run you out of money. It happened to me. I ran out of money and I never got my day in court. So justice is not free. So this is what they were trying to do in 12 years. And thankfully, Fred Hampton's mom and everyone else who had this had volunteer attorneys who were willing to stick with it. And that is something that we just don't have anymore. So yeah, it's an important point. So Mike says, there are dozens and dozens of us. That's right. We have graduated from the tens and tens to dozens upon dozens. So thank you all. Thank you for coming along with us on this journey. Okay. So now here's where the conversation gets really tough, right? So, all right.
Deep breath.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, because I had a number of people that I consider allies came at me. And I don't take it personally. I try to sit back with it and understand where you're coming from, what would motivate you to make these statements, and where does all of that fit in and how we move forward. So Andy, this last graphic, and there's a story. This is history as a teacher with Jill Biden and Melania.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yesterday, and I'm going to talk about that holiday in a moment. But first that came out, there was this graphic, the one in the White House, and Jill Biden had somebody cut out hearts for her out of plywood, and there were some really cute pictures of her hand painting these hearts. And then there was this photo op of her and Biden walking the doggies around the lawn so that she could show him all the stuff that she made. It was basically, arts and crafts for Valentine's Day. And the post, particularly on Facebook in the AOC group, was, isn't this great? Maybe this is for all the children. And I went, wait. The children.
And before you continue,
Okay.
I just want to say that apparently it was too cold for paper mache.
And too much snow. You got to use plywood. Plywood. So, so my first thought, because I'm a mom, was which children was this for? And I was trying to explain to people that, okay, from a political, I guess, State Department perspective, right? When you enter into a higher office, and it could be a cabinet position, it could be the head of an organization, it could be, in this case, the White House. There are people whose entire job is to make sure that you adhere to decorum and protocol. And all of this is part of the transition from one administration to the other. These are people from State Department, these are White House historians. These are all of these folks who understand that perception is reality, right? So Andy, going back again, the propaganda machine. Yep. This is how it works. So when you are in that role, even as an executive, you have these people who try to help you prevent a misstep, because what you do and what you say matters. Like we just had Queen Nira. How many hours have to defend her thousands upon thousands of tweets, right? That sounds silly, but the overarching theme is, we're going to put you the head of an organization, and how are you going to behave? Because it matters, right?
Of course. So
in this case, when I'm looking at this picture of the White House, my first thought, and I said this on the AOC group, is that whoever is supposed to keep the history and guide Jill Biden should be fired immediately. And the reason for that is if you're, and here's where I'm going to generalize, if you're a white suburban Becky, you would look at this picture and go, how sweet. Oh, isn't this wonderful? But if you're not, and there are so many of us who are not, you're going to look at this and go, that's Marie Antoinette. They just told me to eat cake, right? And this is the role of that person or persons there to keep you from doing that, especially when you're trying to sow unity and calm the inflamed country. That was a huge misstep, right? And I think in this case where we're having the conversation of stimulus checks, you're not getting what you thought you were getting, and you're not getting it today, and you may never get it. And oh, by the way, all of these other things that are going on, our country is literally on fire. And you go with this performative gesture, right? So it was the same thing of writing Black Lives Matter down a Washington street, but not doing anything to prove that Black Lives Matter.
Yes. Yes. Even if you're a fan of the Washington football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, this is what we see, what we look at. And you and I have had this conversation, since the inauguration. We've said that if you watch what the Biden administration does, right, and any of the decisions or the executive orders or push through Congress or the Senate or whatever, right, when it makes a difference is when it actually costs donors, the rich oligarchs, money out of their pockets, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. We have yet to see that. We have yet to see a decision come out of this White House that will cost any of their donors money, right? Which is exactly what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've talked about the stimulus, how it was going to, the second the Georgia runoff elections were done, that check was going to come out, right? What did Biden say during the campaign? Eliminate student debt, right? Which changed to eliminate part of student debt, which has now not been talked about since that came out, right? We were all of the promises, all of the promises that came out of that campaign have not been realized. Where are the kids in cages? They're still in cages.
Right, exactly.
What are we hearing as far as the dog whistles, right? About continuing to pursue the extradition of Julian Assange, right? All of those things are supposed to be, un-Trump. The Biden administration, by the skin of their teeth, won an election with their only policy being, we are not Trump. So far, you have not shown anyone that you are any different than Donald Trump at all.
And that is the core of this point. So how do we get here? And this is where I want to back up just a little bit, because I started with Fred Hampton and now we're talking about Joe Biden, but there's this little piece in the middle that I want to get to. And this is where I was like, oh, the epiphany moment as I was watching Judas and the Black Messiah. There's another character in there that I didn't register. Bobby Rush, right? Bobby Rush got his start. He was right there, right next to Fred Hampton. Bobby Rush today is Congressman Rush. And that is the person I know, right? I have spoken to Congressman Rush. And so I want to back up and tell you a little story about Congressman Rush. I don't know him personally. I'm sure he's a lovely individual. I know him from politics. So while I was watching it, I was like, holy shit, he was with the Black Panthers. What the hell happened to him? And we know after so many years in the political machine, you go from fighter to oligarch puppet. And I know that my friends in Chicago are going to bristle at that one, but hold on. So Bobby Rush, when you look at his voting record, and I included a link, you can see the gradual decline from freedom fighter to where he is now, more on the neoliberal front, right? And I know Bobby because I looked at his voting record and saw this this gentleman from Chicago a few years back who was saying some pretty provocative things. He was talking about Rainbow Coalition, and he was talking about Medicare for all. And he was talking about getting health care and livable wages and getting the boot of the police off the people on the west side of Chicago, this poor marginalized community where there are food deserts and healthcare deserts and everything else. And I looked at, wait, that's Bobby Rush's district. Who is this guy talking about Bobby Rush? Anthony Clark. Anthony Clark. So if you look at the character in the movie of Fred Hampton, now I know this is a little bit of a stretch, but I would invite you to check out this guy named Anthony Clark. We know him from our network because he went to Detroit with Rome when they were protesting the governor in Michigan. And it was Anthony and Rome, two Black guys, standing in front of all of these heavily armed alt-right white supremacists, having conversations with them. And I know Anthony because he ran against Bobby Rush. And he was making the case that, thank you, Congressman Rush, for everything you have done. It's time for you to step aside because you have lost your way. Look at your district. Look at the things that you have not done. Look at the performative way that you have supported this district in no substance. And Anthony was the one who stepped up and said, I'm going to do this. And what was interesting to me is that I found an old video clip, and I put that in the links, of then State Representative Obama chastising Congressman Bobby Rush about his performance when Rush was actually running for mayor. And Bobby Rush at that time was saying, well, the reason I didn't prevail was because they took the cheat way out and they got me knocked off the ballot. And I was like, holy shit, Bobby Rush, how many times have you done that in the primary? I can count 5. Just in my short time in Chicago, 5 times you did that. So yeah, and Mike, to your point, Mike says, either you die a hero or live long enough to become the villain, right? And this is the example of somebody who got a little soft around the edges. And so when you look at the example of Anthony Clark, as opposed to Bobby Rush, never in a million years would you know that Bobby Rush got his comeuppance through the Black Panther movement, ever. So to me, this is the bridge between Fred Hampton and the history to where we are now with Jill Biden and Melania as an example, right? So one point I want to make is a friend of mine, Mike, a different Mike, we went down to the city of Chicago and we were going to try and be delegates, Bernie delegates. And so we went and we sat with this conference room in the Union Hall to learn how to become delegates. And it was pretty easily early on that the Democratic Party had already picked the delegates, and this was just performative, this meeting. And we were talking to a former Bernie delegate who had been elected, who was now supporting Warren. And Mike was having a conversation with this gentleman, like, what are you doing? Why, you know, that's an old adage, you be cool with the ones you came in with. And he hadn't, he had switched. And this younger gentleman, Black gentleman, said, well, the white people in my district want Warren. And then he kind of looked around like he was uncomfortable, and he glanced over at Bobby Rush. And he's like, and you know, this is what we're going to do. And we knew that the Democratic Party had told everybody well before the primary, if you want a place in the Democratic Party, you're going to be for Warren. And we knew right then and there, Bobby was part of this whole machine telling everybody, oh, no, not Sanders. You're going to go for Warren. Knowing full well that Warren was going to drop out, right? So hindsight 2020. That's my story about Bobby Rush, from the movie to where he is today, right? So he has signed on as a supporter of Medicare for all, But when we try to have that, let's force the vote, right? We just saw the acquittal of Trump, but it was important to go through the trial to see where everyone was on record. That was the same thing that we were trying to do with force the vote. So is Bobby Rush actually supporting Medicare for all, or is he just a name on a piece of paper? And we couldn't get there because AOC said no. AOC pushed back, and she took neoliberals and progressives and turned them on each other. There's your villain, right? So if you believed in the, what was it, second? Are we going for third on the Trump trial? If you believe that that was important.
You lost count.
There's more coming. There's more coming. But if you believe that that was necessary, and I do, I also knew what the outcome was going to be before we even started. If that was necessary, then the force the vote when it comes to Medicare for all is important. And Jayapal is about to reintroduce her bill for this Congress. So for you neoliberals or wishy-washy progressives, my advice to you is if you're not in this fight, you need to get out of the way, because we're going to roll right over you. Absolutely. It is too important. There are too many people suffering and dying for you to be wishy-washy and a tool of the oligarchs in this particular fight. So
right. And that's a very key thing, right? That we have to, especially the progressive left, has to stop thinking that electoral politics is their way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There is no brunch. Brunch is canceled, and I don't know how else we need to say it. So getting back to this performance art with Joe Biden, and people were just like, oh, can't we just have a moment? No, people are still suffering and dying. There are kids still in cages. And I was trying to go through and explain this to people, and they didn't want to hear it. And it wasn't because my words were foreign, because I was using the same language that they themselves had used against the red MAGA and alt-right people. But here they were now on the opposite side and giving me excuses like, we should wait. He just got there. Give him a chance. He just got there. And it was kind of surreal to see the blue MAGA folks doing the same thing that the red MAGA folks. I had just come off 4.5 years of fighting these people. Now you're in a different jersey. It's the same argument.
Sure. And what gives you the ability to take that stance in this? It's that what's currently happening isn't necessarily affecting you, right? That you're okay, right? This isn't a priority for me. We can wait. Why? Because you're all right, right? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, there's 25% of Americans are out of work, and you have how many tens of millions of uninsured and underinsured Americans that have these outrageous bills during COVID. They don't have a job, so they don't have any health insurance, right? Those people are fighting tooth and nail just to survive. If you aren't in that fight, it's because you're doing okay. Right?
Yeah. And that's really what it is. And this is where we have the term the Beckies, the Beckies with the lattes, who pose such a risk, such a danger to the rest of us with their complacency. And so on that chart, it's a little hard to see, but I included a link to it. It's from the Marshall Project. That chart goes past January for the number of children and families that are currently sitting in cages. So this is where I want to get to where we are today. And the reason why I posed the picture of Melania and Jill was Melania, to her credit, for better or for worse, she actually went to go and tour the facility. Now, she wore that horrific Nazi jacket, but she went and she was honest about her apathy. She was honest that she didn't give a shit, right? Yeah. And so this is where on this Valentine's holiday, it has a special significance. But do you have that image from Chris, her statement? Because I think Chris really, she really pushed back on it in a meaningful way, and it was elegant in her rebuttal that I thought was really important, and I wanted to share that.
It's up.
Okay, so for those of you who are just listening in, I'll read it to you, but and this is for my friend Sherry. So Sherry, it was a public page. I told you this was coming. Biden had 8 months of primary, 2 months after winning to get a plan fleshed out in a fucking pandemic where 25% are unemployed, 80 million uninsured or underinsured and can't afford healthcare, 20 million about to lose their homes or their apartments, millions getting their only food from food bank, and you want to give Biden Harris more time. And then she ended it with privilege much. And that is the point, right? So from November to today or yesterday, Valentine's Day, do you mean to tell me that this wasn't a priority? How many times did we see kids in cages, kids in cages, kids in cages, and then the DeVos family actually literally selling children to good white evangelical families through their own adoption network? Were we not outraged then? Why are we not outraged now? And here's the point about this holiday, that it boggles my mind that people don't know this, right? Valentine's Day is a religious holiday for Catholics. It's a minor holiday, but it's a religious holiday for Catholics. This is how all the rest of you got Valentine's Day. Now, unless I'm wrong, Joe Biden and Jill Biden are Catholic, correct? This is what he has said over and over and over again, that he is Catholic. So this holiday, ironically enough, is about the unjust imprisonment of people. This holiday is a Catholic day to remember, love, and people in prison. So what did Jill do? She had somebody cut out some plywood and paint some hearts, and she put them on the lawn. And I got to tell you, in my household, I am no better or worse than anyone else. But I posed the question to my husband, who is Catholic. And I said, look, if at some point, some alternate universe, you had been elected president instead of Joe Biden, you know I'd be at the inauguration with you. I'd be there with you. He's like, yep. And I said, and you know that the next day I would be gone. I would be on my way to Texas on that dirt road where, oh, by the way, a Senate candidate was harassed and assaulted by police for protesting that detention center. But I would be there the next day, camped out on that road until you closed it. And he's like, oh, no. He said, I'd be there with you the next day closing that facility. And that is what we expect from someone who claims to be a humanitarian. My husband is no better or worse than anyone else, but actions speak. If Biden is a Catholic, if Biden is a better human, if Biden is somebody that we can look up to and feel comfortable with as a representation of us, why are they still open? I have yet to hear a response from anybody. Nothing over the last 3 days, nothing. All I heard was, well, you just don't understand, and then cue in ad hominem attacks. Exactly right. Like I heard from the alt-right.
And my response to that is the closing of those facilities cost donors money.
You're right, Andy, you're right. And that is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to address. That is it. There is nothing more. Right? Like the ICE detention centers. If you're president and you, I don't know, you take the payroll and you drop it to zero, and then you have those people apply for a job in another area, Do you have ICE detention facilities? No. Why wouldn't you? Oh, because you have all these contracts with the states and police departments to play taxi and all of these things that are going on behind the scenes. It's all about the money. And that is the problem here. So whether you're team blue MAGA or team red MAGA, y'all need to do a much better job of being less shitty humans. So Mike says the next distraction from Medicare for all and kids in cages has started already. Biden put out a press release calling for AWB and ending PLCAA and et cetera. Help me out, Mike. It's too early. AWB? What is AWB?
No, there's too many acronyms in Mike's post.
Yeah, there is.
That's right.
So then, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Mike, you need to STFU.
Sherry brings up a good point. What is the role of the first lady or the second gentleman in the Harris case? She says Eleanor Roosevelt was a big part of why FDR became the progressive he was, right? So and this was part of the pushback I heard on Jill. Jill's not elected. Jill's not elected. Bullshit. She's elected. She is part and parcel to the unit that was elected. And we have a special role for the first spouse. Hello.
Yes, and it's not just to decorate Christmas trees or the lack thereof.
Right. And that was the whole point. I want you that same passion that you went after the last one. Mm-hmm. I want that same passion to hold this one accountable. Because let's be honest, she was a teacher. She's also a millionaire. I am not going to cry for a millionaire in no way, shape, or form. And we know she didn't cut out the plywood hearts. We know she didn't paint them all. It was a photo op. So spare me that. Okay, so Mike's clarifying. He said AWB, assault weapons ban. Assault weapons ban, and the PLCAA is a Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. Oh, so we're going to do Second Amendment guns and all of that instead, because this is one of those wedge issues. If you're on the right, you go with, the Million Woman March for your reproductive rights. So it's all about me, my, and I. And you'll put 1 million women in DC to march for reproductive rights. But if it's the administration blue MAGA's in, then you got to go after guns. That's the wedge issue. So wouldn't it be awesome if the 1 million women who marched for their own reproductive rights actually marched for children who are here?
Mm.
I don't understand the disconnect. But yeah, so, okay, well, that's a good one to look into. The assault weapons ban and Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. Thank you, Mike, for bringing that up. So yeah, so we're going to start down this performative journey yet again. Meanwhile, we are 2.5 weeks from 42% in every state, facing evictions. We have still, 25 million who are unemployed. We still have, during this freeze and rain and sleet and winter, people who are standing in bread lines. Fucking bread lines. But instead, we got to take out a moment and celebrate somebody who did a photo op on our lawn. Remember, that's what we put Trump on trial for having his folks try to overtake our building and rush our capital.
Remember when Trump took the Bible over to the church for a picture op during a Black Lives Matter protest? Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember it vividly.
Right, and then now you've got the same kind of thing going on at the White House. Photo opportunity, one's a little more subdued than the other. But they're pretty much the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, everything's okay at our house. Well, what do you mean? Yay, unity. And this is the point, right? If you are elected to a role where you become the buck stops here. You are the representation and your country is on fire. Then no, you don't do any of that. Like you would do it privately with your spouse, but you wouldn't make it a performative issue. If you do want to perform in some way, shape, or form, then you have your press conference out in the cold and out in the snow, and you'd be like, hey, look, here's what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z, and you get after it. Where are the stimulus checks, right? So I don't know. And then on top of it, did you see the presser that Nancy Pelosi did after Trump was acquitted, where she was calling for a stronger Republican Party? And then you had Ted Lieu jump in on Twitter and say, well, I was there. And what she was saying was, we need them to have a backbone. And we're like, no, we don't need them to have a backbone. We need them to go away completely. We need that party to die a horrible death. And we need those people shamed out of politics. We don't need a stronger Republican Party because we have Republicans in the Democratic Party. And just, so that was the icing on my Valentine's Day, watching Pelosi literally come out as a Republican conservative in a blue jumpsuit. Astounding.
Yeah. So what did the impeachment, what did it accomplish? Distraction?
I think so. I'm still waiting to hear a credible rationality for it, because you could see that Chuck Schumer and McConnell made a deal. You could see it. You could see it in real time. This is why they pulled witnesses. We are not privy to what they negotiated. So I don't know. Some sort of performative leverage happened, but it's still yet to be seen. But the casualty on this was for all of those people who believed they were about to see justice being served, only to once again have it ripped away from them. Justice is not for you. You don't get justice. You can't afford it. And this is kind of the hard lesson that...
Yes, but okay, let's be honest. What kind of justice is it? Right? It's performative. Guy's not even president anymore. So let's do this performance for everybody to see, that's being broadcast, in real time to everyone, because it's so important. So Trump gets impeached or doesn't get impeached.
Well, their argument was...
Are people getting their stimulus checks?
Right. Their argument was, well, it's to prevent him from running. I'm like, no. First off, if you fear somebody running for office, why aren't you looking at Tom Cotton or Matt Gaetz? Because they're the next ones waiting in the wings with this fascist ideology and authoritarian penchant, right?
Yes, so they're not an orange buffoon.
Right, exactly. So if you're serious about this, then the antidote to fascism is progressive policy. If you took all of the Trump supporters, particularly now while they're disillusioned with him, and you help them feed their families, and you help them get access to healthcare, and you help show them that there is hope for our future, you wouldn't have to worry about a Tom Cotton. You wouldn't have to worry about a Matt Gaetz, because they got nothing. They've got nothing other than rhetoric. You've got to show them that you care and you are going to do something for them. In our Constitution, it says for the welfare of the general. Let's do that. Let's actually do that. And we're not getting
exactly. That. And if the Democrats aren't doing that, it's because they don't want to. Mm-hmm. Because they don't need to, right? No.
Where else you gonna go? Where else you gonna go? Well, yeah. So, all right. So, last comment here from Mike before we get out of it. Impartial jurors, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Mike Lee of Utah met with Trump's defense lawyers in the middle of the hearing. Yeah, I heard that. Will they be held accountable? No, they won't. But it's good to know. It's good to know what the law says. And
They had to
back
go. It's okay. They were just going over their lines.
That's exactly right. Rehearsing. And, the point that I made to someone else online was like, okay, the ICE detention centers, when it came to all of the people the seditionists who stormed the Capitol, we're giving them bail and releasing them. Why wouldn't we do that for the people who are in the detention centers too? Because the MAGA folks are a bigger flight risk, aren't they? They got money, they get influence, they got family, they got network, they got all of that. People in the ICE detention centers are just trying to make a living, take care of their kids.
Just trying to survive.
Right. So you could do that on day one. He didn't. And yeah, so when it comes to all of these senators who 147 participated, they're still sitting there. And by the way, what's her face? Marjorie didn't get removed from committee. She's still, yeah. So this is when I say that we are on fire, literally on fire. All of this is going on at the same time. You want to stop and celebrate somebody who's responsible for addressing this, the heart and soul of our country, who did a performative gesture. No, I'm not having it. And it's not that I'm angry. I don't hate Jill. I don't even know her. I want her to step up and be equal to the challenge that is before us.
Yes. Instead of being the performative neoliberal first lady to, the father of mass incarceration.
Thank you, Andy. God, that's a beautiful quote. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Sometimes I come up with them. I don't know where they come from.
It was wonderful. I applaud it. So, yeah. So if you watched this entire program and thought that we were being negative, we're not. We're actually giving you something to consider, and hopefully out of this, we will all make an attempt to be better people and to recognize the propaganda and the deflection and distractions when they come, because they're going to be far more sophisticated now than what we've had for the last 4 years. So you need to be on guard, and let's do a better job of helping each other recognize it and stay focused on our neighbors and the people around us who desperately need the help. So that's all I got today.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Carrie. Great show. Okay, so I guess we are done for the day. Yay. We will be back on Wednesday. Do we know what we're talking about yet, Carrie?
No, but I do need to check into this protection of lawful commerce. And then I was chatting with a gentleman, I think he is in LA, who had this really great insight into Harriet Tubman and was talking about the performative piece of putting Harriet Tubman on the front of a bill and her slave owner statue on the back of the bill, and why maybe that's not such a good idea. So we'll see if we can get him booked on for Wednesday, maybe Friday. But any other topics that you want us to cover, do some research, hold a conversation, send us some information, send us whatever it is, a link, we'll dive into it. And, we'd love to have you on to talk about it. So yeah, let us know.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. You have a wonderful couple of days, and we will see everybody on Wednesday. Take care.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone. We out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keep it G. Whoa.